This TFMR podcast is brought to you by your friends at JM Bullion. Visit jmbullion.com for all your gold and silver bullion needs. Hello again from TF Metals Report, and welcome back to your TF Metals Report podcast highlights for the week of October 23rd to 27, 2023. Week began on Monday with all sorts of volatility given the events in the Middle East. But we noticed the gold chart is looking better and better from a technical perspective, moving up through the 50-day moving average last week, and then moving up through the 200-day moving average as well. That's always going to be a key point of resistance or support, depending on which way the trend is moving. And right now it's offering resistance and support as we move forward. So we took a good long look at that COMEX gold chart on Monday, and here's what we found. And now on the daily chart. Now this is interesting too. And you can see 1980 is not a ladder level. It said it's 1960, 2000, 2040, and 2080. And then 2120, as you can see on this December contract. But you can also see where 1980-ish was support in May into June, and then resistance late June and early July, and then support in late July, and then resistance in August. And now we're back above it. Not only are we back above it and using 1980 as support, notice the support found today when it tried to break back down below the 200-day moving average, which is at 1983. Remember how last week, after closing above the 50-day, we noted how Monday and Tuesday we kept finding support those 2 days at the 50-day? And once that was proven to be support, again, we saw what happened Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Well, today, we got support at the 200-day. As long as we remain above there and remain above 1980, the door is open for not only 2000, but 2020. Unfortunately, that would probably signal or be an indicator that shit's going sideways in the Middle East. But whatever, we can't do anything about that. All we can do is watch this chart. And 2020 is still in view here as long as we remain above 1980 and that 200-day moving average. With all that turmoil in the Middle East, we, of course, are keeping a close eye on the crude oil market. It's a very important commodity, and a lot of other commodities are tracking crude as well, like silver seems to be tracking crude. So we took a good long look at crude on Tuesday the 24th, and what did we see? Well, curiously, crude hasn't done much. After the hostilities began in the Middle East, it gapped higher back on Sunday, October the 8th. But as of Tuesday the 24th, it was pretty much the same level it was that night. Where is it going to head from here? That's the question, and that's all part of what we discussed on Tuesday. All right, so anyway, here's crude. Like I said, finishing up back on the 5th of October, Friday the 6th of October, at about 81 and a quarter, opening at 83 and a quarter on Sunday, July the 8th. Within an hour, trading all the way up to 84 and a half. Anyway, that's basically where it is now. So all of this stuff in between, I'm not sure what to tell you. Crude on the daily chart looks crappy after that really crazy run up from the end of June all the way to the end of September in 90 days. Again, going from 68 to 92, sharp break. Kind of a bounce, and now it looks like this move up toward 90 back on Friday was the end of the bounce. It looks like it wants to go into the 70s. Maybe all the way down here to 78, 76. And maybe the longer this drags out without the Israelis, escalating things, maybe it will. Things just kept getting busier and busier as the week progressed, and the headlines seemed to get worse and worse. So we just kept watching gold, among other things, and gold was finding support at that 200-day moving average. On Wednesday the 25th, it once again dipped below that important level, but then recovered, moved back higher, and finished back above. Boy, very important to be finding support there and moving back up, and that's exactly what we're seeing as we go through the week, and that's all part of what we discussed on Wednesday the 25th. So finally, that leads us to the gold chart. Like I said, being kind of held in check below 2,000, and there are quite a few calls at 2,000 that I would imagine the banks don't want to settle in the money. Far more calls than puts up here. So There's no incentive for the banks to let price run through the COMEX close tomorrow. After that, though, maybe they'll let it go for a little bit. If it does, there is room here to run all the way up to 2020, 2040. As we discussed yesterday, getting above the 50-day last week, using it as support, set us up for a springboard all the way up and through the 200-day. And now, for all 3 days this week, we've closed above the 200-day and have traded below it and used it as support. This looks like it's ready to pop again. Now, sadly, that'll probably be geopolitically driven, or maybe the GDP comes in way below expectations tomorrow or something that helps it along. I don't know. Maybe the Bank of Japan does a massive intervention that weakens the dollar. I mean, all these things could happen. But the chart looks like this kind of congestion area up here between 2020 and 2040 would be next. And above 2040, well, you can see what's next. Well, obviously. But for now, the action this week, over the last, from Friday through today, certainly suggests that the next move, again, is another $50 higher. This week's Thursday conversation brought a visit from our old friend, Chris Martenson. It is linked on the homepage at TF Metals Report, and your Thursday conversation is always free. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to subscribe. Just go there, click on the link, and listen to the audio. I've always described Chris as the smartest guy I know, and there's no doubt about that. He's got a PhD in pathology, viral pathology, from Duke and other advanced degrees. He's really a brilliant guy, but he's a normal guy, and it's been an honor to call him a friend for as long as we've been friends. He had alerted us to COVID early in January of 2020, and he's helped us at multiple times since. We hadn't had a chance to talk for about a year, so we had a lot to get caught up on, and I invite you to listen. It's about twice as long as your usual Thursday conversation, coming in about 40 minutes, but Chris is about twice as smart as I am, so it would make sense that it would be twice as long. Anyway, give it a listen. You'll find it at tfmetalsreport.com.
If you really understand where we are in this larger energy story, you know how vital it is that we maintain access to the good stuff, right? Which is, the heavier, sour, or medium sour grades of stuff, right? It's awesome. Okay. You want to know the thing that made me, like, both eyebrows shot up on my forehead and I have barely got them back down to where they're supposed to be, was when I woke up one day and read that China had managed to get Saudi Arabia and Iran to shake hands and reopen diplomatic relations. I'm like, what? This is like, oh my goodness. Like, that was the moment I sent out an alert to my subscribers, like, oh, this is a big deal because first off, the Shias and the Sunnis don't exactly get along. It's kind of a couple 1,000-year-old like problem, 1,500-year-old, like, not getting along thing. And China brokers that deal. Now, what was that? Right. And secondarily, very predictably, right after that, Saudi Arabia just starts marching to not a U.S. drum anymore. And they decide, oh, we're going to cut oil production because we want to. And, Biden's over there trying to fist bump the prince, and it's not working. So what happened? What happened was China is very pragmatic about their energy. They understand what they can get and not get out of alternative energy. They have a beautiful 5-point plan for how they're going to face the next sets of decades. And they know that the last great plum on the entire planet for conventional oil is in the Middle East. And they're forging diplomatic relationships that got the U.S. out of it like that. And all the trouble we're seeing now, Israel, Hamas, Iran, if you don't understand the shaping influence of oil and natural gas in this story, it's probably a pretty confusing story. But for me, it's not confusing at all.
And on Friday, the precious metals went out at about their highest prices of the week once we were wrapped up on the Globex trading Friday afternoon. Like most of the other days this week, some selling on COMEX dropped price early in the session, but then price immediately bounced back, rallied through the COMEX session, went out at its highs of the day near $19.99. But then war fears really began to ramp up on word that Israel was in fact invading Gaza. And that spiked gold a full 1% higher, trading as high as 2019. On the Globex, wrapped up about 2016. Spot gold wrapped up at 2006. And now we are poised for a weekend of watching the headlines. War is always defined by the unknown unknowns and the unforeseen consequences. And really, we have no idea of how things will look by the time trading resumes Sunday evening. We can look at this chart, though. And outside of all the crazy geopolitical influences, it's a very positive chart. Note how price moved up to the 50-day moving average last week, held it, consolidated, used it as support, and then it sprang forward through the 200-day moving average, and then spent almost all of this week holding it, consolidating, and using it as support before surging higher again today. The next target is up there in that congestion zone between 2020 and 2040. But again, this is an unusual time, and who knows what the headlines will bring over the weekend. So I invite you to join TFMR. We'll keep you posted, that's for sure, but keep an eye on the headlines. And remember, Globex futures trading resumes Sunday night, 6 o'clock Eastern, so you might be keeping an eye on prices then through the night, Sunday night, and into Monday. Thank you for listening to your TF Metals Report podcast highlights. Again, no better time than the present to join us at TFMR. It's only $15 a month, and it's money well spent, not only for our analysis and the podcast, but just for access to the community, which is invaluable during times like this. Again, just go to tfmetalsreport.com and you'll find more information. Thank you for listening, and have a great weekend.